So what is disjoint layer 2? Let's say I have my UCS fabric interconnect and of course a blade connected to it. And I have two network environments. I have a production environment and I have a lab environment or a DMZ environment, anything like that. Anything that is physically separated. So I have an uplink there and I have an uplink there. Here I'm running VLAN 500, here I'm running VLAN 700. There's no way on the FI that I was able to configure that, right? I just enabled an uplink port and that's it. I did not do anything else. So what I need to do now is I need to tell this port that it is only running VLAN 500 and that this port is only running VLAN 700. For the blade, it's pretty much okay, right? Because it thinks I can choose one of the two. So I will choose this uplink, statically pin to that uplink, and I'm done. Well, in that case, here the allowed list is not changed. Here on the lab switch, only VLAN 700 is the only VLAN that exists. And for production, it's only VLAN 500 that exists. So it's going to be an issue that I need to solve in terms of connectivity towards the blade. So how do I configure my switch port trunk allowed VLAN list? That's what I'm configuring with disjoint layer 2. So how do I do that? The fun part is that this is only located in one very specific place in the GUI. And you have to know where it is. So let me first go in and create that VLAN 700. Yep, there it is. So I created VLAN 500. Let me configure VLAN 700 first. So I have something that I can disjoint. So this is called the lab VLAN. And that's 700. All right. Now going back to our CLI, let's check the interfaces one more time. VLAN 500 and 700 are both in the VLAN allowed list. That's what I wanted to check. Now I need to configure my Fabric Interconnect B uplinks before I do something, because otherwise I will not have anything to distinct. So let me first configure interface 11 here to be an uplink on both fabrics, because I need to have some port that needs to be configured differently, right? Unconfigured ports on FIB, 9, 10, and 11 are uplink ports. There we go. So I now have 3 uplink ports. On Fabric A, they are put into a port channel, and on Fabric B, they're just separated links and did not flow into a port channel right now. By the way, if you get a question saying, I need to set the link speed to 1 gig on a port, there is a special place to do that. And that is right here. So that admin speed section, those 20 and 40 gigs have nothing to do with the link speed, but that 1 and 10 is of course going to be meaning that I configure either a 1 gig port or a 10 gig port. So if I click Save Changes now, it's going to say it's invalid because there is a Twinax cable inserted into the port and not a copper SFP. But if the lab asks you to configure a 1 gig port from this Fabric Interconnect, this is the place where you would configure that 1 and 10 gig admin speed section. Or do it right here under the uplink port configuration. Yeah, so here it's saying that it is. Let's take another port. Yeah, it's not going to allow me to do that because I do not have a 1 gig SFP inserted. But that's okay. All right, back to our networking configuration. So like I said, on the CLI, check it again. Port channel 1 is showing VLAN 700. Interface Ethernet 1/11 is also showing the allowed list of 500 and 700. So what we want to do is the following. We want to say that VLAN 500 traffic, that is port channel 1. And that VLAN 700 traffic is interface Ethernet 1/11. So that's where I want to distinct my traffic to. And again, this is only true for UCS 2.0. In UCS 2.1, you use a totally different feature for this called VLAN groups. But in our case, because we are running the Disjoint Layer 2, we're going to use the LAN uplinks manager. And in the LAN uplinks manager, we're going to use the VLAN manager. And the fun part is the location of this. So if I go here under LAN cloud and I go to VLANs, I have a number of options, right? All, dual mode, Fabric A, Fabric B. I do not see a VLAN manager option, do you? No. What I need to do is I go under the LAN cloud to the LAN uplinks tab, and then I click LAN uplinks manager down here. Now, if I go to the VLANs tab now, I see an additional option here called the VLAN manager. And this is where I configure Disjoint Layer 2. So there are a lot of topics to discuss about how this is configured. But what I will show you now is with verification of the CLI is the only way you get this straight, so that your story gets straight about this. I tell this interface Ethernet 1/11, you are the lab uplink. Combine them together, all done. What do you think that it does? You would say that this interface would have a switchboard trunk allowed VLAN of 700, right? At least that's what I thought when I initially configured this. But let's check what it actually did on the CLI. It didn't do anything. The allowed list is still the same. But what did it do? Oh, I need to apply the changes. Apply changes. Interface Ethernet 1/11. Nothing is changed. But what has changed is the port channel. There, VLAN 700 is removed. So the VLAN manager is not setting the allowed list. No, it is doing switchboard trunk allowed VLAN remove commands. So what it is, it's just removing VLAN 700 from all the other links that are possible in the system. So, and that is the thing that you really need to remember. This is key for your Disjoint Layer 2 configuration. Because if we say that now, so I think that I did it correctly, right? So what will happen now with the traffic? For VLAN 500, everything will go okay. Actually not. For VLAN 700, let's imagine what's going to happen. So for VLAN 700, everything goes okay. The blade checks for an available link. Now, VLAN 700 is not available on this link anymore. So it's going to pin to that traffic. All good, right? And it's going to forward the traffic, get traffic back. VLAN 700 works completely fine. But what happens with VLAN 500 traffic? That traffic comes online and says, okay, give me an uplink. Hey, I can choose 2 because interface Ethernet 1/11 also still has VLAN 500 in its allowed VLAN list. So I can also pin VLAN 500 traffic to that interface and go out. But that will not work, so I broke everything else. So VLAN 700 works completely fine, everything else is broken. So that's what I need to fix now as well. So I always need to do 2 steps. I first need to allow the traffic that I really want to flow on a certain link, and I also need to configure all the other links and all the other VLANs to go with it. And of course, never forget to do both Fabric A and Fabric B. Because now I only did Fabric A. I first need to do Fabric B. I say interface 1/11 goes to VLAN 700, apply. The other interfaces will use VLAN 500. Do the same for port channel, VLAN 500, apply that. And now I have a successful disjoint layer 2 configuration. Because when we now verify the CLI, now the port channel didn't change. Because I only did something with VLAN 500, that means that the ports that I put there are not going to change. The only thing that's going to change now is interface Ethernet 1/11. Because there only VLAN 700 is allowed. So this is exactly what I want, right? Going back to our drawing, 500 on the left, 700 on the right. Pinning is going to work totally fine right now. So this is disjoint layer 2. Always do not forget to configure both the 2 fabrics. Always configure all of your VLANs. So when the lab tells you that your DMZ VLAN should only use that specific link, it implicitly means that you need to configure the other VLANs as well. Because if you only do one link in one VLAN, you broke your whole setup and you lost every point there is in the UCS section. Why? Because if you did half of this, so let's say the disjoint layer 2 section is worth 3 points, right? Now because you did it wrong and you only allowed that lab VLAN across that link and you forgot about the production VLAN, you broke all the other 10 VLANs that you need to configure and you broke all your network connectivity, which means that you lost all of the points in the UCS section. So this is a very dangerous setup that you need to think about when doing this. Be sure to check using the CLI what is going on my switch. Where do I see the VLAN on which uplink? So if I have my 2 uplinks, so let's use that data network and a DMZ network, going to the same fabric interconnect, now with 2 port channels, port channel 2 and port channel 1, left and right. Then I have a blade that has a network interface card, a NIC. I'll come back to all the different possibilities in the NICs in just a few minutes. Now imagine that this guy carries the traffic for the red VLANs and this guy carries the traffic for the green VLANs. What happens now with this pinning? This guy always wants to pin to one uplink. There's always a static one-to-one mapping client interface, uplink interface. So this network interface card on that particular blade is looking for a single place to pin to. And if this network interface card by configuration has a red VLAN and a green VLAN enabled, so that's something that I just click, right? That are checkboxes that I click for allow these couple VLANs on that particular network interface in the blade. If I have a red VLAN and a green VLAN at the same time, I will fail my pinning. this will not result in a successful pinning and the interface will stay down. I need to have separate interfaces on my blades for blue or for red VLANs, and then I need a separate network interface here for all of the green VLANs. And that can pin to this port, where this port can pin to the red port. So I can never pin a network interface from a blade to a single uplink. That pinning will fail. And here it will show you that error message here in the white paper. It says ENM source pinning failed. That's what the message will be.